Hi everyone. In this session we're going to be having a look at versioning and mastering with inside of Smoke. A particular tool that we're going to be using is a tool known as CopyFX. You can see that the option is located to the left of the controls here in the UI. Normally you would have a CommitFX button over there, but that's where you'd find the CopyFX option. What CopyFX will basically do is it will look at a timeline using specific source tape names and source time codes and allow you to copy any soft effects from those tapes and time codes to another timeline with the matching metadata. This means if I'm versioning a commercial, so for example if I'm making different versions and using the same material, all the soft effects in the one timeline can be copied across to the next. The same thing could be used, for example, in long form work where you may have the first version of the program, the first edit, and you're already starting to work with it in Smoke. You then get a second edit coming through. You can simply just take all the work, all the soft effects work that you've done and copy that into the second edit. It's quite an efficient tool when you actually start using it. So to illustrate this, I've got my first edit over here and I'll put this down in the record area, and you can see it's simply a two-layered timeline. Now every single clip inside this timeline has got a different soft effect. The first few shots have got a vignette effect. The second shot here you can see that there is actually a 3D move using the Axis 3D tool, and then we've got a keying shot tracking. The vignette is constant throughout, and then the final shot in this timeline has actually got some text on a path. So there's a lot of effects happening inside this particular edit. Now this edit is the original master that we've created, and we want to go ahead and use all the effects we've created inside this timeline to be reversioned and repurposed in the second edit. So the way this works is if we simply collapse this timeline by pressing F3, and we take the edit here in the record area and move it back to the source area desktop. So now it becomes a source clip that has got effects and everything embedded in the shot. Similarly, on the desktop here we've got the second edit with the second conform using exactly the same material. Let's put this down into the record area, and if we have a look at this timeline, you can see that the edit is actually different. It's using the same material, but the shots have been arranged in a different order, as well as being different lengths to the original shot. So this could be a shorter version of this particular program. The one thing that is unique about the second edit is that the third shot has actually got a time warp effect on that as well, and we need to make sure that the time warp is preserved as the way this edit was originally done. The way that the CopyFX option works is that it works based on selection. So for example, let's go back to our original timeline that we have here, and if I scroll through you can see that we've got this 3D move being applied to this shot. We've got the vignette there as well. If I have a look at the shot in the second edit, you can see the original footage was simply just a camera move with no vignette and no 3D move. To copy the effects from the first timeline to the second one is very straightforward. All you need to ensure is that the first edit is actually selected on the desktop. Now you come back down to the CopyFX button, you simply hit CopyFX, you confirm the operation, and then straight away that has now been applied to the edit. You can see that the 3D move as well as the vignette have been preserved. One thing that's worth noticing is you can now see that the keyframes in this clip are actually being highlighted. This tells me that there's keyframes on this particular shot. What is very interesting is you'll notice that there's a keyframe sitting outside of this edit. So in the original first edit, this shot was actually longer in the timeline, and this keyframe was actually the first frame of the original shot. But you can see that it still exists even though it goes beyond the endpoint of the shot with the two people. One of the things you can do is if you are versioning and remastering effects with animation, you can change the timing of the keyframes in two ways. The first way is to simply go ahead and edit the keyframe data in the animation channels. A quicker way of doing it is to use the trimming tool and to slip the keyframes in the edit. Now normally when we slip footage, it moves and changes the source in and out points in the timeline. However, if you use a different hotkey, you can simply slip the keyframes and not the material. To do this, hold down the Shift and the comma button. Usually comma just slips the footage, but holding Shift and comma will allow me to slip the keyframes. When I drag the cursor backwards and forwards, you can now see the actual animation slipping along the clip as we're moving it backwards and forwards within the edit. So this is how you can go ahead and retime the animations once you have versioned the soft effects into the next timeline. So this is just giving you an illustration how this works. Now let's have a quick look at the third shot. So the third shot has got a time warp effect on it, but the time warp was not on the original shot from the first edit. So even though I've done this, I now want to apply all the soft effects from the first edit back to the second. This time I want to do every single shot on every layer. So let's go ahead and select the whole edit. To do this, click at the bottom left of the timeline. This will then select the entire timeline for you. Once again, make sure that the original source timeline is selected. And then here we go and click CopyFX. We confirm, and you can now see how all the soft effects have been applied to the edit. When I now drag through the timeline, you'll now see there is my text effect. It's moving on its path with the vignette, and there's also a color correction being applied onto the shot as well. So all the effects with all their keyframing animations were completely remembered and copied and exactly placed at correct frames according to the first edit. If we go over to the shot where we have the time warp, you will see the time warp has been preserved and the vignette, which was copied from the first edit, has also been applied to that shot. So all the effects have been maintained, including the very last shot where we've got the surfer being keyed onto the waves. You can see the vignette, the color correction, as well as the tracking data. All of that has also been preserved in the edit. So hopefully the CopyFX button will be a very useful tool and move your effects very quickly from one timeline to the next. The last point to point out here is that the CopyFX button only works for soft effects in the timeline. It does not work for any effects that you may have created here on the desktop using the desktop tools. If you did use the desktop tools, then you will simply have to copy that shot from the first edit and literally edit it back into the second edit.